Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Dandavat Pranam. Welcome to Nityam Bhagavad Sevaya. Today we are very happy to have the association again of His Grace Srinidhi Govinda Prabhu. He has kindly agreed to complete this chapter, very important chapter, chapter 52. I have done my part from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrta. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Good morning.
Hare Krishna.
Dandavat Pranam. Please
Hare
start.
Krishna, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Prabhuji, we can start. Sorry for the few minutes delay.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naranchaiva Narottamam. Devyam Saraswatim Vyasa Tato Jaya Mudiraye. Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtati. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurmilitam Vena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Vena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Katamahyam Tadanti Swapadantikam Namavo Mishtupadaya Krishnapashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pucharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we welcome everybody to the morning Srimad Bhagavatam class, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. And this is a very important chapter, and by the request of the devotees, I have not actually shortened the this particular chapter. I'm just continue reading because every word, every sentence is very important in this particular chapter. So just a recap, Prabhupada was very sick in Rishikesh and he moved to Vrindavan, and he was thinking the final days were approaching for him, and if at all he wanted to, if at all he leaves the body, it should happen in Vrindavan. That was his wish. So later he comes to Vrindavan, and the medicines for Prabhupada, he says, was Srimad Bhagavatam and Kirtan. And the word was sent to all the GBC secretaries worldwide to come and be with Prabhupada and doing the Seva of Prabhupada. And they all served Prabhupada, and a will was executed to protect the properties of ISKCON. And he also clarified the point on Ritvik Acharya, and upon Prabhupada leaving body, they can accept disciples. And when Prabhupada is living, if they accept disciples, they become Prabhupada disciples. And after Prabhupada leaving body, they accept disciples, they become their disciples, and they become grand disciples of Prabhupada. He clarified that point. And Prabhupada later on little recovers, and he started going to Krishna Balram temple under the Tambala tree on the rocking chair. And he was remembering his parents. He was saying so much care was taken for children. He said, now these rascals are killing children. Most uncivilized life. That's what he says, because a lot of abortions and other things were happening. And he also recalls his the person who read the horoscope at the time of his birth. After 70 years, this man will go outside India and establish many temples. He remembers that, and after that, Swarup Damodar visits Prabhupada, and we all know that he's a great scientist, and he wanted to organize a conference in Vrindavan, and he was suggesting so many names. Finally, Prabhupada comes with a name, Life Comes From Life, for the conference. And immediately Swarup Damodar agrees. And one of the topics Prabhupada dealt with during these days was the conception of the model universe for the Vedic planetarium. And Ambarish Maharaj was his disciple and a great grandson of Henry Ford. And he wanted to build this in either Detroit or a Washington. And Prabhupada wanted to present the structure of the universe as it is presented in the 5th canto of Bhagavatam. And it was indeed very difficult, and there are a lot of questions were asked, and how did Prabhupada do it? And he says, Krishna help me. So now we are continuing the balance remaining topics. Very interesting. Tamala Krishna suggested that Srila Prabhupada's health was already weak and he should wait before accepting more disciples. And Prabhupada said, nothing doing. And Vrindavan peace was punctuated by splashing the fountain. Then he began to speak. He named 3 disciples and he said, these 3 disciples can do. And Tamala Krishna asked if devotees in America should write directly to these men for initiation. Yes, he said, nearby, and said Prabhupada. And he named 3 more disciples leading devotees in Europe. And 5, 6 men may divide, said Prabhupada, whoever is the nearest. And Tamala Krishna asked whether this would apply to both first and second initiation. Prabhupada said, yes. So there is no need for devotees to write to you for first and second initiation, said Tamala Krishna. They can write to the man nearest to them. But all these persons are still your disciples. Anybody who would give initiation is doing so on your behalf. And Prabhupada said, yes. Tamala Krishna asked if there was anyone in India that Srila Prabhupada wanted to do this. And Srila Prabhupada added another name. Srila Prabhupada asked to hear the names he had given. And Tamala Krishna recited 7 names. That's all, said Prabhupada. Now you distribute, for the time being, 7 names. Then he added 2 more. So without waiting for me, said Prabhupada, whoever you consider deserved, that will depend on discretion. Srila Prabhupada said nothing else. And after a few minutes, Tamala Krishna asked if Prabhupada would like to hear a kirtan. And Srila Prabhupada assented by a slight gesture, and the chanters who had been waiting came to join him. The next day morning, Srila Prabhupada added 2 more names, making a total of 11 disciples who would act as Ritvik or representatives of Acharya. Srila Prabhupada had not liked the idea of newcomers to ISKCON having to wait unnecessarily long to be initiated. Now, initiation could continue regularly at the discretion of his 11 selected men. On the July 10th, Tamala Krishna received a phone call from Gopala Krishna. The Mayapur temple had been attacked by a gang of 300 dacoits. And 5 devotees were wounded and they were in the hospital. And Bhavananda Goswami had fired a shotgun at attackers, injuring 2. The police, who didn't arrive until 2 hours after being called, had arrested Bhavananda and put him in jail. Srila Prabhupada became disturbed. If dacoits attacked and we use our shotgun, he said, what is wrong? Later that day, Prabhupada heard the Hindustan Times version of the attack. And according to the news report, some cows had wandered into the ISKCON property, and the devotees had beaten the cows. This had angered the villagers, who on coming to the temple to complain had been shot at it. 2 had been injured. The article named Bhavananda Goswami and at the end mentioned that the founder of the temple, S.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, had not been present. This has been still going on. The wrong news are being displayed, shown in TV and newspapers. So Srila Prabhupada heard an article, made a few comments, and went on with afternoon's writing and translating as usual. But late afternoon, Prabhupada had called Tamala Krishna. I am afraid of a big conspiracy, he said. The last line of the article says the founder Acharya was not present. They were sorry. They would have arrested me and put me in jail. Tamala Krishna scooped that the news article was one-sided. That doesn't sound right, he said, that the devotees beat the cows. Devotees don't beat cows. Within few days, a letter came from Gopala Krishna giving the facts of Mayapur incident. About 50 Muslim men were stealing crops from ISKCON land. When Nitai Chand tried to stop them, they attacked him, cutting his head in 3 places. Later, while he was being treated in the temple infirmary, the men came and beat Nitai Chand and stripped one of the ladies naked. Meanwhile, another 250 men attacked, breaking the gates, cutting phone and electric wires, and destroying the water pumps. Wanting to scare the mob, Bhavanand had fired the shotgun in air. But when they did not disperse, he fired another shot, injuring 2 men. In the meantime, the attackers had broken both hands of one of the Gurukula teachers and beaten many other devotees. 2 hours later, the police arrived and recommended the devotees go to Krishnanagar police station, 20 miles away, to file a complaint. When the devotees had reached the station, they had been arrested and 2 seriously injured devotees were denied medical treatment. Bhavananda Goswami was still in jail. Prabhupada said it was a plot to drive away the Hare Krishna men. They want that all Bengal be completely godless, he said. Unfortunately, the similar kind of people are heading the Bengal at the moment. So when Tamala Krishna suggested that this incident would hurt their village preaching, Prabhupada replied, no, it will be in our favor very soon. I think the central government will take action. This is the same as Kamsa against Krishna. Krishna must win. No one can defeat Krishna. If I had been there, they would have charged that I ordered the shooting and arrested me. Now I am an old man. I cannot take an active stand. So you all must do everything carefully. Prabhupada continued to think and comment on the incident. The Gunda class does not like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he said. They say Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made people emasculated. In Orissa, they say that after Maharaj Prataparudra met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he lost his Kshatriya strength. He was a very powerful king, but after he met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he became effeminate. What is our reply to that? Asked Tamala Krishna. What can you reply? Said Prabhupada. If they conclude something like that, they have no idea of spiritual life. They say this is disruptive. Lord Chaitanya saying, na dhanam, na janam. We don't want such things, and they want them. So how can you reply to such people? Everyone wants this. We say we don't want it. How can you make a compromise with such people? In your country also they say, what is wrong with illicit sex? What is wrong with intoxication? They say we are brainwashing. Is it not? It is very difficult to push on this movement. And still we are doing. That is Krishna's grace. Seeing that Srila Prabhupada was disturbed, Tamala Krishna suggested, will you try to translate this afternoon, Srila Prabhupada? But Prabhupada continued on the same point. A young beautiful woman comes at a dead night to see Haridas Thakur to offer her body, and he denied. Who will appreciate this? And Tamala Krishna says, we appreciate. And Prabhupada says, you appreciate. But in the modern world, who will appreciate? Prabhupada continued pointing out the irrevocable split between the devotees and the non-devotees. Their idea is that young men cannot live without young women. And yet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, oh, you are after a young woman. That is more dangerous than drinking poison. As Prabhupada spoke of Mayapur devotees who had been willing to sacrifice their lives for Krishna, He became choked with emotion and began to cry. Krishna will give them protection, he said, our Mayapur men. He mentioned how Haridas Thakur had also been put into jail and beaten, and how Prahlad Maharaj was also tortured until Lord Narasimha had appeared. He says, until Lord Narasimha had appeared. Don't be worried, said Srila Prabhupada, crying and speaking as if all his Mayapur devotees were directly in front of him. And he says, Krishna will protect you. We are doing our best as far as our intelligence goes. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted that in every nook and corner of the world, this movement should be pushed, and we are limited. In an attempt to ease Prabhupada's sorrow, Tamala Krishna started reading the latest report of Ghanshyam, who was distributing books in Eastern Europe. The report of extraordinary success drew Prabhupada's attention away from Mayapur, and he smiled and said, that is dynamic. Tamala Krishna continued reading the report. Everywhere we go, people either know about you or they are very eager to find out about Krishna and yourself by reading your books. Anyone who has distributed your books in the communist countries will support my claim that nowhere in the world are people more appreciative of your books. Tamala Krishna looked up from the letter and commented, he has been everywhere, Prabhupada. And he says that your books are more appreciated in the communist countries than anywhere else in the world. And Prabhupada said, yes, they are hungry. A few days later, a full on-the-scene report came in the mail from Jayapataka Swami in Mayapur. The local Hindus of Mayapur were outraged at what had happened and were mobilizing mass petitions in support of ISKCON temple. Although the newspaper reports were false, gradually people were learning the facts. Jayapataka reported vivid details of Bhavananda and other devotees being marched through Navadvip in chains, holding each other on their way to court, and the people of Navadvip offering them respects. The devotees were still in jail, he said, constantly chanting Hare Krishna. So on the whole, the report was optimistic. Prasadam distribution was continuing in Mayapur. Book distribution in West Bengal was increasing, and the preaching parties were well received wherever they went. Srila Prabhupada's prediction was coming true. The incident was turning in devotees' favor. He commented that the enemies had thought they were digging up a garden snake by attacking Krishna devotees. But finding that they had been in fact unearthed a cobra. July was a good month for Srila Prabhupada's work on Srimad Bhagavatam. He continued dictating very early in the morning and in the afternoon, completing chapters 8 and 9 of 10th canto. It was his great pleasure to do so. Working on Srimad Bhagavatam, he was completely transcendental to his physical condition. Despite the accompanying heart palpitations, and despite his faint eyes and general weakness, even to sit was difficult. And yet again he began working. Nothing could stop him. Speaking into the hand microphone of his dictating machine, oblivious to his bodily conditions, Prabhupada described patiently and methodically how Nanda Maharaj family priest, Garga Muni, performed a name-giving ceremony for a baby Krishna. In his purport, Srila Prabhupada often spoke from his personal experiences and realizations. This is the mission of a Supreme Personality of Godhead, and devotees also have the same mission. One who executes this mission of Para Upakar, performing welfare activities for people in general, is recognized by Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as being very, very dear to him. Nacha tasman manusheshu kaschin me priya krittabaha. Similarly, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also has advised this Para Upakar, and he has especially instructed the inhabitants of India. On the whole, the duty of a pure Vaishnava devotee is act for the welfare of others. Sometimes sitting in the pre-dawn open air in the second floor veranda, and sometimes in the humid heat of bright afternoon, Srila Prabhupada worked describing the limitless Vedic knowledge, just as his predecessors, the Goswamis and Krishnadas Kaviraj, had done when worshipping Krishna and Lord Chaitanya while living in Vrindavan. Srila Prabhupada, however, was the first great Acharya to make Krishna consciousness literature available to persons of all countries throughout the world, regardless of birth, status, and previous character. Even as he composed the latest chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam, thousands of young men and women were working on his behalf to preach the Vedic message to the world. His disciples were in fact keenly aware of how Srila Prabhupada was producing the 10th canto purports in Vrindavan. And they prayed to Lord Krishna that he be allowed to continue for many years so that he could complete the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. In explaining the infant pastimes of Lord Krishna, Srila Prabhupada described an entirely transcendental mode of consciousness beyond material designations of babyhood or old age. All these pastimes of Krishna and great enjoyment exhibited by mothers are transcendental. Nothing about them is material. They are described in Brahma Samhita as Ananda Chinmaya Rasa. In the spiritual world, there is anxiety, there is crying, and there are other feelings similar to those of the material world. But because the reality of these feelings is in the transcendental world, of which this world is only an imitation, Mother Yashoda and Rohini enjoyed them transcendentally. Srila Prabhupada was now rendering a particular sweet part of Krishna's pastimes. And with relish, he describes Krishna's stealing butter and feeding it to monkeys. And he's showing the universal form to Mother Yashoda. In describing how the vision of Krishna's universal form was beyond Mother Yashoda's comprehension, Srila Prabhupada shed light on all incomprehensible situations, including his own. So Mother Yashoda could do nothing but offer obeisances to the Lord. But one should not try to understand the supreme cause by argument or reasoning. When we start beset by some problem for which we can find no reason, there is no alternative than to surrender to the Supreme Lord and offer him our respectful obeisances. Then our position will be secure. This was the means adopted in this instance also by Mother Yashoda. Whatever happens, the original cause is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When the immediate cause cannot be ascertained, let us simply offer our obeisances at the lotus feet of Lord. Mother Yashoda concluded that the wonderful things she saw in the mouth of her child were due to him, although she could not clearly ascertain the cause. Srila Prabhupada made a deep and joyful appreciation of a pure devotion of Mother Yashoda for baby Krishna, and he described her as an emblem of all pure devotees of Lord, especially the residents of Vrindavan, who loved the Lord in spontaneous affection. The pure devotees who inhabit Vrindavan, he wrote, do not possess any bodily conception. Such pure devotees were fully dedicated to the pure service of Lord in sublime affection, prema. This had been described by Lord Chaitanya. He said, as the highest perfection of life, pure love in relationship with Krishna and Mother Yashoda, Srila Prabhupada wrote, appears to be the topmost of all the devotees to have attained this perfection. Srila Prabhupada was concerned that what he wrote be published and distributed. It was his service to his Guru Maharaj, and he received a great satisfaction in hearing that book distribution was still expanding all over the world. Harikesha Swami, the GBC of Northern and Eastern Europe, reported that he was printing a very large quantity of books in 13 languages. And after hearing only the beginning of this report, Srila Prabhupada exclaimed, all these blessings of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj on you. You are the most important grandson of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. Go on doing like this. In a similar mode, Srila Prabhupada pushed his GBC secretary for India, Gopala Krishna, to produce Hindi books faster and in greater quantities. Whenever Gopala Krishna came to visit Srila Prabhupada without a new publication, Srila Prabhupada would reprimand him for his slowness. Gopala Krishna therefore began a policy of visiting Prabhupada only when he had a new book to present. In mid-July, when Gopala Krishna bought a copy of Srimad Bhagavatam first canto, part 2 in Hindi, Srila Prabhupada accepted it happily and said, twice now, unless he brings some book, he won't come. Because every time I criticize him, where is the book? Where is the book? On the July 20th, Abhiram, another disciple of Prabhupada, arrived and reported to Srila Prabhupada about Mayapur. There was nothing new in his report. Later, Srila Prabhupada inquired from Tamala Krishna why Abhiram had come. Tamala Krishna explained that Abhiram had decided to take up business, but was undecided with a city to work in, perhaps Bangalore or Bombay. The next instructions are very important for all the Grahastha devotees. Later, after Prabhupada had retired at night and was lying in bed under the mosquito net, he again called Tamala Krishna. Prabhupada was concerned that Abhiram not drift away from Krishna consciousness movement on plea of looking for business. Srila Prabhupada said that he himself had lived independently in Grahastha life, and so had Bhakti Vinod Thakur. But our aim was different, he said. When these neophytes remain aloof from temple connection without attending the functions, gradually they will be lost. Tamala Krishna replied that for that very reason he had suggested to Abhiram that he make his business in Bombay. Bombay actually said Tamala Krishna, I find Grahasthas have no desire to live independent of temples. He explained that in Bombay temple, the Grahasthas could get apartments near enough to the temple so that they could attend Mangalarti and other functions. Yes, said Prabhupada, unless these things are continued, the Karmi's poison will spoil them. He can do independent business, there is no harm, but he must be connected with a devotional service. Srila Prabhupada had not moved his body while talking, but he had turned his head slightly. Now he laid his head on the pillow. Srila Prabhupada told Abhiram that by doing a business in Bombay, he could benefit by living near temple. Grahasthas should not be dependent on the society, he said. At the same time, they should not be independent of the society. Srila Prabhupada laughed at the apparent contradiction. This is the position, he said. Our society cannot take charge of family. There will be so many numbers of families. How we will support? At the same time, if they remain independent of the society without the touch, then the karmi's poison will infect them. Srila Prabhupada concluded that the solution for Grahastha was either to get an apartment near temple or to live in temple if possible. They should not live completely independent, he said. That will be a future danger. Srila Prabhupada said he wanted ideal Krishna conscious Grahasthas, just like Bhakti Vinod Thakur, he said. There are many. I was a Grahastha also. There was a deity worship, everything nice. I was publishing back to Godhead as Grahastha. So the aim of Krishna consciousness was there. I could not live family life because of certain circumstances. That is a different thing. But I must be in touch with the devotional service in the temple. If you live nearby temple, it is easier, or in the temple. But if he remains aloof, that is dangerous. When Tamala Krishna brought up some problematic details of Grahasthas living in temple buildings, Srila Prabhupada stayed to his main point and said, anyway, these things have to be adjusted. You cannot follow very rigidly in the case of Grahasthas. Somehow you have to adjust. We cannot allow them to be lost. Prabhupada saw with alarm that after much training, a Grahastha couple could be lost simply because they disassociated themselves from the temple. It could be a great loss. In an attempt to avoid it, he was instructing one of his GBC representative. Prabhupada said, unless this danger was curbed, then the future of our society becomes hopeless. Srila Prabhupada's servant Upendra was also present, and he asked Prabhupada about the man's responsibility to maintain his wife and family. A man should not marry, said Prabhupada, unless he had the power of maintaining his family. He should not expect the temple to. Why should we maintain a Grahastha, said Srila Prabhupada. And where is the means? But these things are all to be adjusted. I can give you an idea. Then Prabhupada gave an example that if a Grahastha was maintaining the deity worship gorgeously in the temple, that was also preaching, and the temple could consider maintaining such man's family. So the guiding principle, said Tamala Krishna, should be that under no circumstances should anyone become lost. And yes, Prabhupada said. Or else, where is the preaching? It will be like Alexander the Great. He was conquering, but as soon as he went to conquer a new place, the last place was lost. Suppose I have conquered Bombay, then I go to Karachi. But in the meantime, Bombay is lost. That was being done by Alexander the Great, when there is no proper management. Just like the British Empire was lost in that way, they could not manage. So similarly, we should not expand too quickly, suggested Tamala Krishna, unless we have a proper management. I am therefore stressing the book distribution, said Prabhupada. He wanted to impress upon his leaders the main outlines of his program. and it should be their duty to carry these programs out. At least don't make me Alexander the Great in my lifetime. He laughed. They say to me, you're a great, 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 but don't make it small when I am living. Or after, said Tamala Krishna, we will never make you that way. We should never do that. Then, said Prabhupada, that's my request. People recognize I am great. Don't make me small. I will not give you much trouble, but I am now invalid. What can I do? It seems like even if you are invalid, said Tamala Krishna, it gives us more opportunity to serve you. And Prabhupada said, thank you. What can I do? He laughed softly and said, I have to give you that opportunity. It seems that it is your mercy to us, said Tamala Krishna. All right, go on, said Prabhupada, dismissing them. And Tamala Krishna says, Jai Prabhupada. On the July 22nd in the morning, Tamala Krishna told Prabhupada that on the following day, Lord Jagannath would travel down 5th Avenue in New York City. Lord Jagannath is very kind to Melechas, Prabhupada said. Orients are mostly Melechas, but still they are made pujaris. One devotee criticized an Orient, and Lord Chaitanya slapped him. Why do you criticize my servants? Just see his kindness. I pray to Krishna. Anyone who has given a little service, please bless him. And Krishna actually does. He doesn't forget any service done. Tamala Krishna inquired, doesn't Radharani also pray like that to Krishna? Yes, Srila Prabhupada. Radharani says, I am not sincere. Here is your real servant. And that is actually Mahabhava. Krishna becomes a servant to his servant. Therefore, disciples' first duty is to be submissive to his guru. And Tamala Krishna says, Srila Prabhupada, all your devotees are very grateful to you. Srila Prabhupada suddenly became immersed in thoughts of his devotees. And he became very ecstatic. Closing his eyes and rocking his head, he spoke with choked eyes and tears. Oh, your intense love for me. I am actually living for you. All over the world, everything is going on. Money is coming and being spent. And I don't have to worry. I am so much indebted. And I am taking so much service from you all. And Tamala Krishna says, it is we who are indebted. There is no way you can ever pay this debt to you, Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada says, that is Brahat Mridanga. I am beating from this room and the sound goes 10,000 miles away. Our enemies are surprised. How this man is still going on. Srila Prabhupada went on appreciating how people in many cities were enjoying the Rath Yatra festivals, seeing Lord Jagannath and dancing and chanting. He remembered past Rath Yatras such as in 1969 in San Francisco, when some of the devotees were dancing joyfully around the tree. He began recalling many other past wonderful experiences in ISKCON. Toward the end of July, Prabhupada's health seemed to be worsening again. And again he mentioned that the end might come at any moment. Tamala Krishna had been acting as Srila Prabhupada's personal secretary for continuous 6 months. And he had become Prabhupada's eyes and ears and his spokesman, especially in dealing with ISKCON management. And he had also become a personal confidant assisting Srila Prabhupada in his transcendental modes. As a sincere servant, he now began suggesting a different remedy. Srila Prabhupada had recently been feeling and expressing intense devotion towards his disciples in their preaching. Taking this as a cue, Tamara Krishna suggested that if Prabhupada could travel to West and be with his disciples there, he would find a new life. And Prabhupada said, but if I die, I want to do so this in Vrindavan. Tamala Krishna replied that Srila Prabhupada should not think of dying. If he would go on tour of a West, see the devotees there, take prasadam made from food grown on ISKCON farms, then certainly he would respond to such devotion and regain his appetite and strength. Tamala Krishna pointed out that when Srila Prabhupada had been feeling like this in May and the GBC had come, he had responded to the reciprocation of love by increasing his own desire to live. One thing he can do, said Srila Prabhupada, in your daily routine, you can pray to Krishna. If you want him to stay, please cure him. If not, please take him away. We are fully surrendered to you. Now it depends on your desire to keep him alive or let him leave this world. Srila Prabhupada was pointing out that he was not a victim of some mundane moroseness, robbing him of a will to live. He had already said that he would be with Krishna in any case. Staying in this world or living, it was not up to him, but was up to Krishna. He recited the prayer of a king Kulashekara from Mukundamala Stotra. My dear Krishna, please let me die immediately so that the swan of my mind can be encircled by a stem of your lotus feet. Now while I am strong, otherwise at the time of my final breath, when my throat is choked up, how will it be possible to think of you? Tamala Krishna persisted in his affectionate line, however, insisting that Srila Prabhupada could not think of living. There was so much unfinished business for Prabhupada in this world, such as personally seeing the installation of deities of Radha Ras Bihari in Bombay temple. Srila Prabhupada admitted it was so and added, another ambition I have is that the populace is suffering from agnosticism. The rascals are suffering, but they do not know why. I want to drive away agnosticism from the world. Tamala Krishna assured Srila Prabhupada that if he were to go to the West, agnosticism would be driven out. The devotees were already working hard on Srila Prabhupada's instruction. But if they could have his physical presence, they would increase their preaching unlimitedly. Tamala Krishna no longer kept himself only in the passive role, waiting for the spiritual master to ring the bell and then waiting to hear what he wanted. Now he was trying to persuade Srila Prabhupada to travel, and Srila Prabhupada began to consider it. He became very enthusiastic. And when I am in Vrindavan, said Prabhupada, it is transcendental. But that much mercy Krishna has shown me. And wherever there is our center, that is also Vaikuntha, New York, Los Angeles, Paris, or London. And Tamala Krishna offered an itinerary to visit London, staying at Bhakti Vedanta Manor, and also seeing Radha Londoneshwara. Then to New York and seeing the devotees of ISKCON skyscraper with Radha Govinda. Then to the farm in Pennsylvania, and then Los Angeles. where he could see the new dioramas of Krishna's pastimes. And Prabhupada, to remain in Vrindavan is a sentiment, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada agreed. In New York, if I die, you will have to entomb me to the roof. He jokingly joked grimly. There is no other room. If I die, as long as I die among you, you're all Vaikuntha men. I had a dream that Vaikuntha men came to take me. They were all white men with shaved heads. Your countrymen cannot believe how you have changed. Srila Prabhupada said that they could consult an astrologer to see whether it was auspicious for him to travel and whether he would be cured and how long he would live. I was born in evening at 4 p.m., said Srila Prabhupada. It was an Andotsava. You can consult an old Panjika to see the day. It was a Tuesday. I am prepared to go to the West. Tamala Krishna then quoted from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 37, where Krishna tells Arjuna to fight. Either you will die and achieve the heavenly planets, or conquer and enjoy the earthly kingdom. Srila Prabhupada said the verse was appropriate. Throughout the night and the next day, he considered the traveling proposal and mentioned to his other servants, Tamala is arranging a big party. I was praying to Krishna, what is this slow death? Prabhupada told Tamala Krishna. Then you quoted that verse. At least my disciples will know I came at the risk of my life. They are the future hope. I must enthuse them. Krishna ordered Arjuna, and I am Arjuna's servant. I am not so unlimited to think that this is my country. Everything is Krishna's. Why should I limit Krishna? Tamala Krishna gave encouragement. When you get there with so many devotees, you are giving their lives for spreading Krishna consciousness and assisting you. It will really be enthusing. And you won't have to speak so much. It's your presence. You are seeing the devotees and them seeing you makes difference. So in that sense, it won't be exhausting. It's a good climate now too. August in London, it's a very good time. And Prabhupada turned to Upendra and said, his words are making me feel different. Just hearing, I am enthusiastic. Srila Prabhupada said Tamala Krishna, by going west, I know you will recover. This Tamala Krishna Maharaj is telling. May Krishna fulfill your words, said Prabhupada. He spent the rest of that afternoon hearing Chaitanya Charitamrita readings from various devotees. At one point, he began to express great bliss and said, read Chaitanya Charitamrita always to me. These 3 books. There is no comparison in the world. I may boast like this. I am fortunate to be able to present these books throughout the world. People are accepting them even blindly. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Bhagavad Gita. After a day had passed, Srila Prabhupada considered the travel proposal more seriously and mentioned some of his defects. He said that wherever he went, his physical condition would go with him. But here you have not been translating lately, said Tamala Krishna. Who says, I shall never again translate, Prabhupada countered. Every action has some relaxation and then activity again. Prabhupada said that according to allopathic medicine, the only hope for him was to enter a hospital and undergo intensive medical treatment. According to Ayurvedic medicine, however, there are specific medicines. As Prabhupada sat on his balcony speaking with his secretary, he wore actually sunglasses. He would wear them even late in the day and a darkened room. To his disciples, this was another source of worry, that he appeared to be having problems seeing. Such things made the prospects of traveling to the west seem doubtful. Why couldn't he just stay in Vrindavan? Some of the devotees reasoned, where everything was arranged for his convenience. The devotees had sent messages to 3 astrologers, and all the reports turned that same afternoon. Some of the reports offered absurd remedies without knowledge of Srila Prabhupada's position. But all of them agreed on one point. The next 2 months would be most difficult for Srila Prabhupada, and traveling should be avoided. One astrologer recommended Srila Prabhupada wear a blue sapphire. So it is not hopeless, Srila Prabhupada said. After hearing all the reports, at least for the next 5 weeks, keep me very carefully. For the time being, no travel. And he also said to secure a blue sapphire and chant Hare Krishna. On the last day of July, the governor of Tamil Nadu, Sri Prabhudas Patwari, who was visiting Vrindavan, paid a short visit to Srila Prabhupada. The governor could only stay half an hour, but Srila Prabhupada spoke energetically with him the entire time. When Prabhupada explained his condition of health, the governor at once invited Srila Prabhupada to come to Madras and stay at Raj Bhavan, governor's mansion, where he said the best doctors in the whole South Asia were available. But Prabhupada, rather than prolong the discussion about his body, used his bodily condition as an example to preach the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. After all, he said, as long as we have got this body, then Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, the birth, death, old age, and disease, we have to accept. This is the statement of Bhagavad Gita. So the human endeavor should be to stop this repetition of birth and death. When Vishwamitra Maharaj went to see King Dasharath, the king inquired, Punarjanma Jayaya. You are a great saintly person trying to conquer over birth and death. Is your process going on nicely? Prabhupada then used an example of his bodily condition in a different way. To illustrate the concept of Varnashrama Dharma, he compared the Brahmanas to head, the Kshatriyas to the arms, the Vaishyas to the belly, and Shudras to the legs. If they are all in good condition, then the health is all right, said Prabhupada. Now, at the present moment, I am suffering because my belly department is not working. So we cannot neglect any department. There must be all departments, and they must be cooperative and healthy. This movement is meant for that purpose. It is the duty of government to give us protection. Srila Prabhupada mentioned the devotees' recent difficulties in Mayapur and asked for protection. We will do it, no doubt, Governor Patwari replied. I am meeting the Prime Minister tomorrow, and we are going to discuss that matter. The governor acknowledged that the reports in the newspaper were distorted. He asserted that Madras had a good atmosphere for religious work, and he mentioned several Swamis who were doing good work. And of one, he said he is making good propaganda about Gita everywhere. There are many persons making propaganda, said Prabhupada frankly. But if you don't mind my saying so, all these men are in ignorance of what the real meaning of Gita. Bhagavad Gita, he said, should be understood as it is and it should be adopted especially by the Raja Rishis or the government leaders. Again, the governor said how nice it would be Prabhupada would come to Madras. Prabhupada seemed to consider it seriously and thanked the governor. Finally, Prabhupada requested help in getting the permanent residency in India for some of his disciples. They will never do any harm, he said. They will never make part in politics. They would never take part in politics. And governor says, I know it. So kindly try to help them to get Indian passport. Later, when Prabhupada mentioned he was 50% decided to go to Madras, he and his servants began discussing the merits of travel to Madras and other places in the world. Although he could not move even a few feet without assistance, if Krishna desired, he was willing to travel. In July of 1977 was a special for pious Hindus. And the people of Vrindavan spent extra time in reading scriptures and visiting holy places. So by the end of July, when the trees and bushes were freshening with green leaves, pilgrims came in crowds to Vrindavan and to Krishna Balaram Mandir. Despite the mud and the rain, many of the people were in jubilant mood, relieved from the oppressive heat and anticipating Julana Yatra, the swing festival of Radha Krishna. Julana Yatra was Vrindavan's biggest festival and would occur in mid-August this year. The local newspapers were giving reports on Srila Prabhupada's health, and the genuine concern for his well-being prevailed throughout Vrindavan and surrounding villages. Therefore, because of the festival season, as well as out of the concern for Srila Prabhupada, many people were coming to Krishna Balaram Mandir. Those who came around 9 a.m. got to see Srila Prabhupada, and when he went in the morning darshan of the deities, Srila Prabhupada still had no appetite and had scarcely eaten during the past 6 weeks. He was no longer regular in his times for sleeping, taking massage and sitting up and translating. Feeling himself to be critical period, he had given permission for the devotees all over ISKCON to recite simple prayer. My dear Lord Krishna, if you desire, please cure Srila Prabhupada. He would regularly go before the deities each morning, wearing his dark sunglasses and sitting erect in the rocking chair. He would hold his palms together in a gesture of prayer, while two men in front or one behind carefully carried the rocker from Srila Prabhupada's room into the temple room. They would set the chair down first before the deities of Gaurnitai, then before Krishna Balaram, and then before Radha Shamasundar. Then they would carry him into the central spot in the courtyard under the Tamala tree and set his chair down on the black and white checkered marble floor. I think I'll stop here.
Yes, Prabhuji.
I think
few more pages are there. We'll discuss how to conclude that.
Okay, Prabhu.
Yeah, Prabhu, thank you for the very beautiful narration. I think in today's narration, the dedication of devotees in Mayapur, Prabhupada's concerns on them, and Prabhupada's instructions to Grihasthas, I think definitely stand out the most. Of course, there are many other things. Devotees can unmute themselves to share any reflections or any questions. Please ask, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam. It's like the disciple preaching the guru, like how Krishna was trying to motivate Arjuna. Now Tamal Krishna Prabhu is motivating Prabhupada to go to West. Very nice way, and it's nice, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Maybe a humble request from my side to the committee to allow Prabhu to complete the 11th. This is, I mean, in my way, I thought this is like a crest jewel of the entire Lilamrta. If we can complete it, it'll be great. I mean, I don't know your difficulties. It's only a humble request from my side, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam.
Okay, Mataji. I have no problem in continuing and completing next week, but if the team of devotees of Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya allow me to complete it.
Definitely, Prabhuji. I think that should not be at all any concern. I think we'll wait for a few more devotees if anyone who wants to share anything. Okay, Prabhuji. I think we can conclude. We're anyway 5 minutes past 9 o'clock. Thank you again for your time.
Kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyo vacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you, everyone.